Hello, good evening. Okay. Before I get started on anything, I want to say thank you for all of the love and support that I have received from my last sit down video when I talked about my scoliosis story. Thank you. Got a lot of positive feedback, and I think one of the best things is seeing people who are not related to me, are not any of my friends, but are random strangers out there in the world who are coming and watching my video, who are interested in the topic, either because they're having surgery soon, they had surgery, or are in this community. That's amazing, and that's all I ever dreamed of while making that video. And seeing what people searched to get to my video, and that's insane. People searching like scoliosis surgery story, scoliosis story, spinal fusion, and knowing that people are joining that community and getting info from that, and I'm helping out people. That's insane, and that's amazing, and thank you. And if you weren't one of those people, thank you too. I'm glad that I got to share a part of me with some other people, and that's amazing. So, yeah. Hi, I'm back. It's been a minute, but I am ready to talk about my PTSD, which, if you hear that, you might be like, oh my god, what's wrong? That's incredibly serious, that's insane. You might associate it with military veterans, which is the biggest thing, police, firemen, but there are so many different forms of PTSD, and today I'm going to be talking to you about medical PTSD, which can also be called a variety of different things, including like medical trauma, medical depression, surgical trauma. Believe me, there is a whole world of things. But, yeah. So, it's definitely worse at this time of year because, my anniversary of my surgery is coming up. But I decided to talk to you about it because I've had some people telling me that I should be more open about it and share more things because very limited people know about my PTSD, and I've spoken to very limited people. I could literally count the amount of people who I've talked about my PTSD with on one hand. So yeah. And I'd also just like to say that I never want to be like, my life sucks and you should pity me, because there are so many people who need your help and who have it way worse than me, who have PTSD way worse than me, and there are so many reactions that I've gotten different reactions from different people, and bad reactions, good reactions when I told them. So just know that, and everyone is different, everyone's mental health is different, everyone's approach to mental health is different. So, yeah. So anyway, I developed some depression, flashbacks, trauma, stuff like that, basically PTSD, about a year after my surgery. And I didn't know what was happening, and I would get weird flashbacks, and I didn't know how to deal with it. And I didn't really tell anyone because I didn't know what was happening to me. And I was scared, and I basically told myself about a year and a half ago that I was not going to talk about the pain that I was in, and I wasn't going to talk about the surgery that I had because I wasn't going to be the girl who was constantly complaining about it or who was constantly talking about it, which now has kind of come back and bit me in the butt because a lot of people don't realize what I'm going through, or when I can't do things, or when I make life decisions, they don't realize the pain that I've been in, and they don't realize the physical pain and the mental pain, all of that, because I don't show it and I don't talk about it because I made that decision. And so around this time last year, I started having weird flashbacks, weird memories, invasive memories. And the first one I can vividly remember is when I was watching Grey's Anatomy. Love that show, but it gives me a lot of PTSD. And I was watching it, and I remember seeing the hospital set and seeing a chair in the corner of the set and on TV and breaking down, because I remember the chair in my hospital room, and I remember having to sit in it, and that's just insane. And I was like crying on the floor in tears, crying, and couldn't handle it, and I didn't know what was happening. And then another one that still happens a lot is me being in the shower. So I'll be in the shower, and the sensation of water running down my back will immediately flash me back to when originally after surgery, when I had to take a shower, and me being so afraid of the water running down my back, and that freaked me out. And so that's one. My brother had his wisdom teeth. Like, I could not be in the same room as my parents because of the way they were talking to him, which was insane. And I remember that from my surgery. So around like a month, I'd say, or a month or two or so of me getting these episodes every once in a while, and not really knowing what was happening, I did some research, and I think I originally looked up like surgical depression, and also that led me to like operational depression, operational trauma, different keywords, and I found this study, and I can't tell you where it was from, but it was one of the first things that came up in this study was on spinal fusion patients, and it said that 20% of spinal fusion patients develop PTSD symptoms or operational depression, which blew my mind. It was insane. That's 1 in 5 spinal fusion patients. That's insane. And I was like, why didn't I know this? Why wasn't I informed this? Okay, I got interrupted. Oh, hi. Hi. So that made me, finding that out and realizing that like I could have known this, I could have I don't know, finding that out, that made me really mad and angry, because I was told that it would be fine and I would go back to normal and everything would be like it was before. And then I find out that 1 in 5 spinal fusion patients develop medical PTSD. That's insane. And I was like, how come people don't know this? People need to know this. And people need to know about medical PTSD. So a few months later, I'm still dealing with this, and I don't know how to tell people about this. And the episodes at that point in time were pretty severe, but I didn't know how to tell people this. And so I eventually told my mom, and I didn't want people to freak out, and she was like, okay, interesting. Her reaction was not very severe, which I'm grateful for, and she was like, and I just brought it up kind of casually, so it wasn't like a huge deal, and yeah, and we didn't talk about it very much after that, and that was it. And at that point, I was still calling it like depression, and I thought I had other forms of mental health stuff, and I didn't really know what was going on. And so then the winter went by, and my mood is a little bit lower in the winter to begin with, but the winter went by, and I started feeling very, very anxious, and I didn't know why. And eventually, if you hear any cat sounds in the background, that is my cat. He wants out. He's just playing back there. But eventually, I started feeling like I couldn't breathe. And I had a history of asthma, and I had these problems before, and I figured it was my asthma. I had medication for asthma. I was not taking it. I felt like it never did any good, and I couldn't breathe, and it was eventually getting to the point where I felt like I was going to pass out. And me, with my mentality of not wanting to be needy, not wanting to bring people into things, or seem, he's just rolling around, or seem crazy or anything like that, I didn't tell anyone for a few weeks that I was literally to the point of passing out, which seems insane, because why wouldn't you tell people that you feel like you can't breathe and you feel like you're gonna pass out? And I didn't want to have to go back to my pulmonologist and tell her that I'm not taking her medication. But that was the point. And then I was sitting on the couch, literally doing nothing one day, almost passed out. And that night I told my brother. My brother's like, well, you have to tell Mom and Dad. You have to tell them, or I'm going to tell them, and you have to tell someone. And eventually I did tell them. And we went to my doctor, Timmy, no. He's very interested in this. Meow, say hi. Say hi, say bye-bye. So eventually my doctor told me that I should get on another rescue inhaler, because I was using albuterol and it made me shake really badly, and so I didn't want to use it, so I got on a different one, and I already had anxiety. I will say that I am diagnosed with anxiety, but that made me panic. That new inhaler, as I was taking it, made me very, very panicky and have intense panic attacks where I was like rolling on the ground, like crying. My hand was cut up, if you saw me at that point, I was probably wearing a brown sweatshirt because I refused to take it off, and my hand was probably all scratched up from literally scratching at my skin because I was so anxious. So eventually I got off the inhaler, but it got to the point where I was so anxious I could not sit in class. I was having bad PTSD, I was having bad, everything was going wrong with my mental health. And I couldn't breathe. And it was taking a toll on my lungs, and I could not get a solid breath of air. And one day I texted my mom and I was like, I cannot breathe. I just cannot breathe. And I was at school sitting in an English class, and my dad pulled me out into the hallway and was like, I have to take you to the hospital. If you cannot breathe, I have to take you to the hospital. I called your doctor. They think that's the best thing to do. So I was hospitalized for anxiety and not being able to breathe. And I really seriously thought that the breathing problem wasn't anxiety. I thought that it was completely separate at that point. And I was having some trouble with my rib, which was poking out and kind of causing some irritation and a little bit of pain, but mostly discomfort. And I mentioned that to the ER doctors when I was in the ER, and they got an ultrasound of the ribs, which was really cool. And I basically told them that I had read about something called slipped rib syndrome, and they immediately got this ultrasound where they push on your ribs and to see if the rib is slipping and going underneath other ribs, which was happening kind of severely. It's kind of a rare thing, and there's not a lot of research into it, and not a lot of people research or do surgery on it. But I thought that was what was causing my breathing problems. Turns out it wasn't. It could have been affecting it. It could have been giving me anxiety and affecting it. I went back to my pulmonologist. She told me that I most likely do not have asthma, and I have something called vocal cord dysfunction. I don't know. But basically my vocal cords contract, making it so that I can't take a deep breath. I'm physically unable to take a deep breath. And I was told that I need to be doing less physical activity to avoid surgery on my rib and this vocal cord stuff and all craziness. And I was getting medicated for the anxiety that I was just diagnosed with at that point. Going to therapy, and my therapist was telling me that I don't have what I'm calling surgical depression, that it's basically PTSD, and I wasn't talking to very many people about it at all. And all of this is happening, and I was missing lots of school, and it was not going very well. And eventually, I was talking to my therapist about how I don't talk about my medical PTSD, and I was scared. And that's what it came down to, was I was scared about the stigma surrounding the stigma surrounding PTSD, that if I say that I have PTSD, I potentially freak people out, for one, and two, lessen people who have PTSD 1,000 times worse than me, or who have been through way more dangerous and way more life-threatening things than I have, because truly my life really was not in danger. It was just traumatic. And I was afraid of that. And so I decided that it would be okay. I can talk about what's going on with me. And I brought it up with someone very close to me. So essentially they freaked out, had a very bad reaction, and was telling me kind of all the things that I feared, which was that I was lessening people. And I think the biggest thing that I was using that or saying that I have PTSD to get attention or for people to pity me, which I never want to do. And that saddened me and scared me away from telling anyone else. Because the fact of the matter is that I could literally name the amount of people who knew about my PTSD on one hand. Like, I wasn't doing it to get attention. I wasn't like making something up for that reason. And everyone's experience is different. So I felt like my medical PTSD was completely different from someone who was an Army veteran who literally fought for our country and risked their lives. Is completely different situation, goes through different things, is completely different. And so it took me a while to film this video and to get where I am now. And I had a therapy session today, and she was talking about how you have to open up and let people help you before you can help other people. And ultimately in this world, all I want to do is help other people. And so I hope that by making this video and talking about it, that people who are going through similar situations and who are experiencing this stigma on trauma and PTSD, whether it's medical or something completely different, and people are reacting to it and responding to it, I hope that helps you, and I hope that while helping you I can help myself and talk about it more and open up and allow people who didn't know or who knew very little to help me. Yeah. And thank you so much for all the love and support I got on my last sit-down storytime video. My anniversary is coming up soon. I'm not sure what I'll do. I know that I've already filmed lots of footage from this summer and from things that I've been doing from New York and from Junior Olympics, and I'd like to talk a little bit more about where my life is going, because I've made some changes, some good changes that hopefully should help my health ultimately, and hopefully that will come. It's just a matter of literally editing it, but this one I wanted to come out before any of those other ones, because this is the one that I wanted to make and help eliminate that stigma. So thank you for watching. Do all the things. Thumbs up if you liked it. Thumbs down if you didn't. I don't care if you give me a thumbs down. And subscribe to see the rest of those videos that are coming. And I hope whatever you're experiencing, you can reach out, find help, find love, because know that it's always there. And even if you can't see it, it's always there. love you guys. Love you for watching this. Thank you. I think that's all I can say.